Hey everybody, Dustin Schmidt back here again. I'm a photographer and DP here in Oklahoma City. Today I want to talk about how I set up my Canon R5C for when I'm doing interviews. So one of the things that I was really excited about when I first got the Canon R5C was that it was a small profile cinema camera. So I could get the same type of quality that I get out of some of the higher end Canon cinema models, but in a smaller package, right? And so that's kind of the dream, right? But it doesn't always work out that way. So one of the things that happens is you start to add a few more things on it, right? Some of that is out of necessity. Maybe you need a larger monitor so you can get a little better view of your image. The monitor that's on the Canon R5C is not that bad. It's pretty good. I monitor from it quite a bit. It's nice that it folds out, doesn't obstruct any of the ports. Has pretty good brightness, pretty good sharpness, all that type of stuff. So I actually do use it quite a bit. But if you get a client or somebody who wants to come over and check out the image, they probably don't want to review it on that small little screen, and they probably don't want the overlays or anything else on it. So I'll typically leave all that stuff on the small monitor, use that to check all the settings, and then send the clean feed out to a larger monitor. I've got a small HD 702 Touch. This is a monitor that I've had for a while. Has a bunch of great features. A couple of the key things. One is just that it's a lot bigger. It's a 7-inch monitor. It's brighter. It gives you some more options for ins and outs. It'll do HDMI in and out. It'll do SDI in and out, cross convert, all that kind of stuff. Let's talk quickly about what I do for sound here. I've just got a tiny little Rode Video Micro. It's the original one. I think they just came out with a brand new one. And I'm only using that for scratch audio on here. I still don't have the Canon XLR adapter. I typically do my main audio through my Canon C200 when I'm doing dual interview setups. And so I'll just run a regular XLR into that. So this is just for scratch, sync afterward in post, and that's been working fine for me. Right now I've kind of cobbled together a bunch of spare parts for the quote unquote cage on this. It has a half cage, which is the smaller half cage for the R5C. Partly why I like that is because I also use the R5C a lot for photography, and I don't want to break it down a ton in between different types of jobs, whether I'm doing photo or video. The nice thing about this little half cage for the R5C is that it's got an arc of Swiss on the bottom, so I can pop it into a couple other pieces that I have to easily swap between setups. Right now it goes into a Kessler quick release, which is just an arc of Swiss quick release. One of the things I like about that is that it has a lever release on it that requires 2 steps to disengage. So you undo the lever, but then you also have to push in on a safety catch. And that's just kind of an extra level of safety on there to make sure something forgets to get latched. You know, stuff like this that has so many different moving parts. I just want some levels of backup there for safety. And then that Kessler quick release is just screwed onto some old wooden camera parts. So used to have some old, one of those old wooden camera cages that has the 15 mil rod on the side and the kind of the base and the top that you can adjust and move back and forth and all that to accommodate different cages. I think it was their V1 universal cage for DSLRs. And I've used that in the past. Now I tend to like, smaller, more purpose-built cages, just because there's less bulk there. But I still had the parts lying around and wanted to utilize that without buying a bunch of brand new stuff to set up a fully built tripod rig for the R5C. On the back, I've got the wooden camera C box. That just allows me to take that HDMI coming out of the R5C and then convert that to SDI if I want to, or vice versa. That's kind of the nice thing about the C box, stands for converter box. Gives you the capability to swap in between outputs. Battery on the back is the FX Lion Nano 3, so it's the big one. It's the 150 watt hour. I like these FX Lions because it has a direct USB-C out, so you can power the camera, the R5C, and get that full, 8K or 5K or 6K Super 35 RAW, that you need to power through USB-C, and plus for longer run times, all that kind of stuff. I've also plugged this in and run it off of a, just the Apple brick, and you can just get the USB-C to USB-C, and that's basically your, direct to wall charger, right? And so that's pretty cool. It'll run your laptop and it'll run your camera. So if you don't need to do both at the same time, bring the one charger, run your camera. When you're done, plug in your laptop, make sure it's charged, and you can transfer files. And that's pretty cool to just cut down on extra stuff that you need to bring. If I'm running off the battery, like I said, that one battery allows me, it has a D-tap output as well, so allows you to power the monitor and also power the camera. The one thing about that is both those things are kind of power hungry. And so that battery, even 150 watt hours running both, the small HD 702 touch, which draws a decent amount of power, and the R5C, which draws a decent amount of power, will suck that battery down pretty quick within a couple hours. I need to maybe run a test and time it. But and so I always have backups. But one thing I'll actually do is take this Anker battery, which I've talked about before, which is an Anker battery that has power delivery. This is the PowerCore Plus 26800 PD. And I've just got Velcro on the back here. And what I'll actually do is Velcro this to the back of my V-mount battery. And so I'll have two batteries kind of sandwiched together, run the camera off this, and then run a D-tap into the monitor, so that you can power them both separately. And then when you run it that way, then you can run for, at least half a day. You get to lunch before you swap, or even like 6 hours. This alone, I know will run the camera for, almost a full day, like 6 to 8 hours. And then that way you're not having to worry about powering things down, swapping stuff out. You just put them both on, they'll just run the whole time. So again, I wouldn't want to do this if I was running around with this as a run and gun kind of setup, to have multiple batteries stacked on each other, Velcro, all that kind of stuff. It's just easily, stuff will pop off, cables get snagged, whatever. But on a tripod, who cares? Like, it's just sitting there. I'm not moving it. At the beginning of the day, I set it up, it runs, and that's it. So it works fine for that. I want to talk about my tripod setup that I'm using for this. It's the same tripod that I use for photography work. It's a Really Right Stuff 24L, so it's the long version. It's the Series 1. It's carbon fiber. It's really sturdy. I think the max weight on it is somewhere around 40 pounds. So it can handle the load of this, DSLR style cinema camera that's now been built up to be something that's way heavier than that. So that was one of my concerns. Secondly, it's got an extra part to it that I bought. And the nice thing about this series of Really Right Stuff tripods is you can swap out the base. And so I bought one of their leveling bases to replace just the flat base. And the leveling base allows me to, slightly gives me a couple degrees of travel, like a ball head does, to level out the camera when things just aren't quite level, but without adding a huge amount of bulk. Because if I was going to have a second locked off tripod, I didn't want to bring a huge, big, bulky video tripod to do that. I'd like that second one to be as small as possible, and also be able to use something that I already had, which was my video tripod. So that was kind of a nice bonus to that setup, and something that's been working really well, and have really been liking for this type of locked off to interview stuff that I do. I use a small rig piece that converts the mini HDMI to full-size HDMI, and that way when I'm unplugging stuff a bunch, it keeps the stress off of the micro, and so I just use the main one. But there's ways around all of this stuff, the battery life, the inputs and outputs, the monitoring, all of the things that you can complain about, you can get around those. Now, it does cost extra money, and some people want everything, right? They want the camera they buy to fill every single possible need that they could have. But cameras aren't built that way. Cameras are built to do a certain job most of the time. And sometimes they'll do a couple different things, and they'll do them, pretty well at each. But if you want to do X, then buy something that does X. If you want to do Y, buy something that does Y. As always, appreciate you watching. Thanks for coming by, and we'll see you next time.